You got a match, Jim?
Ah, still alive, are you, George? Yeah. Yeah, I thought you died on me. Haven't had a word from you for the last 6 blocks. What's the matter? Been sworn to secrecy?
Anyone ever tell you talk too much?
Sure, all the time. I had a platoon sergeant in Korea that used to reckon they ought to have had me at Panmunjom. Oh, that was the place where they held the truce talks instead of in the front line. And I never let any slinging off get me down. I'm just naturally a talker. Funny thing, though, George. I never was a talker once. Well, I mean, not before I went to Korea. The boys in the old battalion, in the old 3rd Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment, used to call me Tombstone. You know? Silent as a grave. Tombstone, eh? That was before we got perched up on Little Gibraltar. Those patrols out in no man's land got me started talking. Talking to myself out there sort of became a habit, and just like I've been wound up for years and the safety catcher's taken off, I starts talking and I haven't stopped. Funny thing, that. And they used to call the fighting in Korea those days the Quiet War.
Citation! Presenting authentic stories of heroism and gallantry taken from the histories of war. A story of valor in that quiet war. Thousands of miles away from the front-line trenches that plunged and staggered along the steep ridge country near the 38th parallel in Korea, people spoke of the Korean conflict as the Quiet War. That was in those days early in 1953 when peace talks were held in the neutral village of Panmunjom behind the enemy lines. When daily representatives of the United Nations drove from the south, while North Koreans and Chinese communists drove from the north in their Russian-built jeeps to talk, and endlessly talk, about peace. There was a stalemate in the talks early in 1953, but in the no-man's land between the opposing trenches, there was no stalemate. There was continuing savage action, artillery bombardment and counter-bombardment, tank attacks and the scorching burst of napalm. And nowhere was the war fought more bitterly in those quiet days than in the valley below the gaunt, battle-scarred hill known as Little Gibraltar. There, in trenches on the heights, the Australian soldiers of the 3rd Battalion held a vital position, and at night, from those trenches, they went out and down into the reality of the unreal quiet war.
Hey, Tombstone, you'll fire that bayonet right away if you keep on sharpening it.
Didn't you hear? The boys don't call me Tombstone anymore, Claude. You're not in touch with the situation since you came back from that leave in Tokyo. You've got to keep up with events, you know. Like, would you know what that searchlight means across there? Is it? Standing straight up, away back behind those hills on the skyline. That's marking where they're holding the peace talks.
Oh, someone told me old Tombstone had finally broken into words. I didn't think he'd got it this bad.
Bad? What are you talking about? Just because a fella likes a bit of friendly conversation now and then, all you jokers suddenly reckon he's turned into a proper gas bag. And anyway, you jokers were always slinging off, calling me tombstones and all sorts.
All right, no more. Jim, isn't it? Almost forgotten your proper name.
Of course you had. Forgotten that I had a tongue in my head and a brain that was always working. Like I was saying, just because a fella realises he's got just as much right to talk as anyone else...
Sergeant Morrison giving us the high sign. Time to get moving.
Ah, Sergeant Morrison, is it? I want to be sure, because I'm...
Sergeant E. J. Morrison of Port Melbourne. There he is.
Ah, yeah. That's him. Only John. I wanted to be sure, because I don't want to be going out into this no-man's land with any novice. Well, I mean, if the war's going to end soon, a fella doesn't want to get knocked off out there on some patrol, does he? And I always say that the safest way to stay alive is to have a patrol leader who's experienced. And I've got to say that Sergeant Morrison is experienced.
Yes, Sergeant E. J. Morrison of the 3rd Battalion was an experienced soldier in that savage fighting in the Korean terrain. That was a troubled country of sudden hills, bare except for an occasional azalea bush. He knew the mind of the enemy and was able to find his way blindfolded by the midnight blackness of the deep valleys right into the enemy strongholds.
How many patrols out there have I done now? Must be close on 20. Oh, Struth, no wonder a fellow's talking to himself. What was that? Nothing. Must be hearing things. Too many patrols. Yeah, but look at Sergeant Morrison. He's done more than 100 patrols out here. Still cool and quiet as he ever was. How does he do it? Yeah, I was all right at the start, but look at me now. Star Shell, keep down. Can the commos see us out here in the valley? Star Shell? That's a good sign, really. Means they haven't a patrol out here themselves. No ambush like Lieutenant Lloyd and Baker copped the other night. And smack into a commo ambush. Lieutenant Lloyd hit twice himself. 2 of our fellas killed, 2 missing and 18 wounded. I wonder what happened to the missing 2.
Ain't that you there, Jim?
Yeah, Claude. Me all right. How you making out? Anything?
For Pete's sake, give your tongue a rest. I could hear you burbling across here. Next thing, the Chinese will pick you up, and that'll be curtains for the lot of us.
I was just thinking about the 2 fellas from Baker Company who got posted missing the other night from an ambush out here.
Well, start thinking about yourself. Remember, the commos have got tripwires and booby traps all through this.
Don't you worry about me. I've been out here a few times myself. An old dog for a hard road, you know. I could find my way blindfolded down here.
Quiet. Hear that? Across there, someone cocked a rifle. It wasn't one of ours, too far to the right. I hope you can find your way back blindfolded.
Who's turned into an ear basher now?
She's on for young and old! She's on!
Down!
In the stalemate of the Korean War, there was no time for talking. Time only for fighting. Fighting for life against a cunning, fanatical, and well-armed enemy. By day, trench warfare. By night, patrolling in no man's land. And the Australians of the 3rd Battalion forced the pace. For instance, there was the action on the night of January 24th, 1953, when 30 soldiers from A Company, with Lieutenant Jeff Smith out in front and Sergeant John Morrison in charge of a section, went out into the darkness towards the enemy trenches. Their objective was to penetrate the enemy lines and bring back prisoners for intelligence men to question.
What are you making out, Claude?
Oh, this is no time to start talking, Jim.
Might be the last opportunity I have. How did I get picked for this one? 6 of us to go forward with Sergeant Morrison after 2 prisoners, while Smithy and Corporal Frank Mackay stayed behind with cover parties to watch our rear. I say, how did I get tricked for this one?
Maybe someone decided it was the only way to shut you up. Now, quiet.
It's all right for him to tell a fella to keep quiet. Gotta do something. Not all cool as cucumbers. What's that ahead? Chinese. Dead one. Dead comma. What's that ahead?
Jim, you hear me?
Yeah.
Enemy sentry ahead. To the right. Okay.
Okay. Amongst the sentries now. Very, very tasty. Yes, I see him. Not a sound now. One past. Any more? Yes. There's another one standing up across there. He's not looking this way, though. Oh, yes. Yeah, I made it again. What's that ahead? Gun emplacement, looks like. Yeah, now we're getting near it. That's the parapet they said we'd see above the Chinese trench. Any minute now.
So our small party of 3rd Battalion soldiers penetrated across no man's land and into enemy territory, past the minefields and the barbed wire. Then for 1 mile they inched their way past Chinese sentries, gun positions and dugouts until they came to a trench. And there Sergeant Morrison signaled his party to halt, while he went into the trench to capture 2 communist soldiers.
You covering him, Jim?
Sure, I got this flank covered. You watch your flank. He's gone into that trench. Still no sound. Even if he gets them out, how are we going to take them back through these commo lines? How?
The alarm was given. Once inside the enemy trench, Sergeant Morrison found the enemy alert, and he had to fight his way out. On one flank, a party led by Lieutenant Smith created a diversion, but the alarm was raised and the Chinese came out in force, seeking the audacious intruders.
This is it. This is where Sergeant Morrison's luck runs out. Oh, what's he doing? Telling us to get down. He's going to take them on. That party of Reds. There must be 15 of them coming this way. Now she's on for young and old.
The first party of 15 or so Chinese Reds fell as Sergeant Morrison's party turned at bay. Then another 6 communists charged the Australians, but they too fell before the raking fire. However, some of the Australians were now wounded. And with 3/4 of a mile to go back to no man's land and the Red forces alerted, they faced bleak prospects.
Jim, give us a hand here.
You wounded, Claude?
No. Sergeant Morrison is organising 3 stretchers for blokes who are. 5 of the wounded can walk. Just give me a shoulder. You hardly call it a wound.
I haven't hit your tongue anyway. Okay, give us your weight. On the leg, eh? No, we'll get you back all right. That one means a hospital bed in Japan and convalescent leave.
We've got to get back to our own lines yet, mate.
I've knocked off about 50 Reds so far.
Still plenty more where they came from.
Yeah, but nothing to equal our Sergeant Morrison. And anyway, if worst comes to the worst, you and me together could almost talk our way out of any spot. Just lead on, man. We'll keep pushing on.
That was part of the quiet war in Korea. The patrol fought its way back through the enemy lines, back through no man's land, while our artillery and mortars covered the retreat. Of the 15 Australians who went out with Lieutenant Smith, 3 came back. Of Sergeant Morrison's similar party, 3 were lost and 8 wounded. The quiet war in Korea. For his part in that routine operation, Sergeant J Morrison of Port Melbourne was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal. Citation. These stories are authentic. The program was produced at AWA by Donald Crosby for Army Public Relations.